Exclusive. Surviving the Alaskan wilderness alone, my grandfather's 7 brutal rules revealed. The cold bits of the Alaskan wilderness are like whispers from the past, haunted by echoes of those who dared to brave its icy grasp. When my grandfather shared his tales around the crackling fire, his intense gaze would pin us with its unyielding weight. The flames cast flickering shadows, as if the spirit of the wild itself surrounded us, demanding respect. Those stories, filled with both dread and triumph, were lessons scrawled in blood, sweat, and unyielding grit. Yes, my grandfather had been one of the few to survive the merciless grip of nature. His 7 brutal rules were not recommendations, they were lifelines. The first rule involved a piercing glance at the woods, a challenge whispered beneath frozen breaths. Never turn your back on a wild animal. Those eyes, searching for warmth in the air, had witnessed too many gruesome scenes. Almost every tale began with an encounter, a growl heard in hushed intervals until it erupted into chaos. He'd talk about running in the dark, adrenaline pumping, heart racing, the chill of fear edging ever closer. You could feel the icy fingers trailing after you. Then came the stories of solitude, how the wilderness would gnaw at your mind. The longer you stayed, the more it twisted your thoughts. He warned that in those moments, the trees seemed to whisper your name, and shadows latched onto you like anchors, each reminder of who you were becoming a haunting stranglehold. The depth of loneliness was palpable. You could practically taste it, bitter and cold against the back of your throat. There were moments, he warned, when you had to choose between your sanity and survival. Those moments hung heavy in the air with a tension you could almost slice with a knife. My grandfather suffered no fools. He once froze a man's laughter midair with a single glare. "You think this is a game?" he'd bark, sending chills down even the bravest of spines. The respect commanded from those caught in it only grew. When he described their harvest rituals, the men would huddle close, sharing grim stories that echoed around the flickering flames. "Trust no one and nothing," he'd growled, and the room would steep in silence. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. And at that moment, when the fire crackled a final time, he dove into the gravity of survival. Each rule he relayed felt like a tightening noose around the heart. Death was not just a possibility. It was an old friend, lurking behind every bush, beckoning you closer with every dangerous choice. The stakes were staggeringly high. Would you dare to disregard them, knowing what you now knew? Each tale was a puzzle piece that fit perfectly into the next, leading to one terrifying question. What would you do if you had to face this wilderness alone? The shadows grew longer, the fire dimmed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the wilderness was waiting. Waiting for me. The night wore on, and the shadows began to feel alive, creeping closer as the wind howled its chilling song. I couldn't shake the gripping sense of unease lurking behind every rustle of leaves and snap of twigs. The air grew thick, heavy with anticipation, as if the wilderness itself had its own heartbeat, the pulse of something ancient. I remember that first crack of lightning illuminating the dark woods. The storm rolled in suddenly, a furious beast unleashed upon the land. Rain pounded relentlessly against the ground, each drop like a war drum echoing across the vast expanse. My heart raced as I sat there, feet planted firmly in the damp earth, replaying my grandfather's rules in my mind. Rule 2 haunted me then. Always have a plan. But what plan could I have for a storm like this? I hadn't even thought far enough ahead to fetch firewood or set up shelter. I felt a wave of panic rise in my chest. It squeezed down, tightening with the cold grip of fear. Alone, with nature raging, all I had were the memories of my grandfather's warnings. As the first lightning flash illuminated the trees, I saw movement. My breath caught, Was it my imagination? Or was something waiting just beyond the trees, its shape twisting among the shadows? My rational mind screamed to write it off as paranoia, but the instinct to flee surged through me. The wild felt watchful, as if the beasts of the forest sensed my vulnerability. I remembered the tales the creatures that wandered these woods looked for signs of weakness. Then came the growl, low and menacing, slipping out from the oblivion. My skin prickled. Instinct kicked in. I had to act. Scrambling to my feet, I rushed to gather whatever supplies I could hope to utilize: a tattered tarp, some rope, and a handful of flares I'd tucked away just in case. I began to fashion a makeshift shelter, sweat mingling with the rain as I fought against the storm. The noise of the wind drowned in the roar of my heartbeat. Suddenly, the ground quaked with approaching footsteps. Heart in my throat, I glanced up. A silhouette emerged through the curtain of rain, dark and foreboding. My grandfather's warnings echoed louder than the thunder. Never turn your back on a wild animal. The figure was massive, muscles glistening in the sporadic flashes of lightning. Fear surged through my veins, freezing me in place. What was I supposed to do? Fight? Run? The instinct to flee was paramount, but part of me was rooted there, paralyzed by the unknown beast in front of me. The predator's eyes glinted hungry and sharp, reflecting the ferocity of the storm. It took a slow step, inching closer, drawn into the sphere of my warm, flickering light. Panic hit me hard as I fumbled for the flares. With trembling hands, I pulled one free just as the beast lunged. It was now or never. Would I survive this encounter, or was I bound to meet my end in the grip of winter's wild embrace? I struck the flare, the bright flame bursting forth like a rocket in the dark. Its light lit up the creature for a split second, revealing twisted shadows and predatory eyes that glowed like amber embers. The growl escalated, a low rumble that reverberated through the air, and I stumbled back, heart racing as the flare hissed in defiance as darkness descended once more. What came next would make or break me. The tension hung thick like the storm clouds above, and I knew an ancient dance was about to begin, one of survival and instincts clawing to break free. Was I ready to face the true ferocity of nature? Or was I simply a pawn in the wilderness's game, poised for disaster? All I could do was hold that flare high and hope it would drive the shadows away long enough for me to escape. But as the growling deepened, and the eyes locked onto mine, I couldn't help but wonder who would be hunting whom this night. The wilderness inched closer, and I faced the unforgiving question. How deeply did I truly trust my grandfather's rules, and would they hold when the very essence of survival was at stake? The flare sputtered, casting wild shadows on the surrounding trees. In those frantic moments, I understood the urgency. Light was my only defense against the beast that prowled closer. Its growl reverberated, shaking not just the air but the very ground beneath me. I had always envisioned nature as a serene painting, the sun-dappled woods, the gentle rustle of leaves. No one told me it could morph into a theater of terror. The creature continued its approach, muscles rippling beneath fur slicked with rain, every ounce of its being radiating hunger. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice shaky yet desperate for power. I lifted the flare again, the crackling flame a futile barrier against its primal gaze. It paused, eyes narrowing, as if assessing whether I was worth the effort. My heart pounded in my chest, echoing louder than the storm's chaos. As it arched its back in preparation to leap, a flicker of hope surged through me. My grandfather's Rule 5 whispered in my mind, "Know your enemy." Frantically, I scanned the surroundings. The woods, even drenched, harbored makeshift weapons. I was surrounded by trees, thick branches that could be used to fend off the threat. Then it struck me: height. I needed to gain it. I took a step back, raising my flare higher, hoping the light would provide clarity. Crouching low, I grabbed a sturdy branch, its bark slick and slick under my touch. The beast hesitated as I let out a primal scream, calling all the courage buried within me. It was defiance, mingled with sheer terror. "Get away." I swung the branch as it lunged toward me. The makeshift weapon connected, a solid thud meeting fur, causing the creature to stagger momentarily. It shook its head but didn't back off. A raw growl erupted, more furious than before. My stomach twisted. I could see the teeth, sharp and yellowed under the flare-esque glow. Savage. Suddenly, I dashed towards the nearest tree, the flash of lightning guiding my escape. Adrenaline surged, flooding my veins, propelling me forward even as my breath quickened. I climbed, my hands slipped on wet bark, but desperation pushed me higher. Above, the branches interlocked, a web offering sanctuary. I could hardly breathe as the creature paced below, sniffing the ground. I scooted higher, searching for a branch thick enough to support my weight. The rain soaked my clothes, chilling and heavy, but I kept going. Think. I scolded myself as I wedged myself between two branches. My gaze didn't waver from the ground. There was no retreat now. I would either face it or become prey. The growling grew louder, a mix of anger and confusion, as if the beast understood my move. Paced, watching, calculating. This wasn't just an animal. It was a predator honed by instinct. A chill swept through me, the realization seeping deeper than the cold. What if it waited me out? What if I couldn't hold the branch for long? I felt my pulse in my throat, a rapid percussion against the symphony of thunder and rain. The storm raged on, but the wild thing below now loomed, an embodiment of the very fear I ran from. A flash of lightning illuminated its face once more, and my heart skipped. That wasn't just a beast. There was an intelligence lurking behind those eyes, a message woven in its growl. What if there were more? A thought gnawed at the edges of my mind, straining my focus. I had stumbled into a territory of hunters, and I was the intruder. Panic threatened to swallow me whole as I turned my gaze into the thick woods surrounding us. How many were out there? As rain poured down, I closed my eyes, summoning strength like I had learned before, but something stirred in the shadows around me. Lurking and watching. Who were the true predators? And would my grandfather's rules be enough to guide me through this hell? The shadows seemed to thicken with each rumble of thunder. I felt the weight of the forest pressing in on me, a living entity that relished in my fear. Up in the trees, every fiber of my being screamed for escape. But I was pinned, trapped in this precarious balance between flight and fight. I couldn't let the creature sense my uncertainty. The growls turned more guttural, vibrating through the branches like a dire warning. I peeked down, trying to gauge its movements. It had returned to sniffing the wet ground, its eyes scanning the underbrush hungrily. Each droplet of rain that fell felt as heavy as a stone, a reminder that time was slipping away. What do I do now? The question spiraled in my mind as I gripped the branch tighter. My grandfather's words played like a reel in a broken projector. Adapt, or be devoured. With a sudden resolve, I started to gather the remnants of my nerves. I scanned the area. The storm had sent most creatures into hiding, but I remembered my grandfather showing me how to make noise to draw hunters away from their lairs. Maybe that would distract it long enough for me to find a way out. I let loose a series of loud, desperate shouts. Hey, over here. The sound of my own voice was startling in the encroaching gloom, but I pressed on, hoping against hope it might shift the beast's focus. For a moment the growling halted. It turned slightly, head cocked to one side, as if considering my taunts. Just when I thought my plan might work, the beast lunged toward the bottom of my tree, laser-focused on me once more. My heart raced dangerously fast. The branch beneath me quivered. I gripped it tighter, my knuckles turning white. There was no escaping my current snare now. I had to stay calm. Another growl erupted from the brush, deeper and more menacing. I blinked, realizing there was a second creature. My heart dropped as I peered into the darkness. Shadows danced between the trees, and with each flash of lightning, I saw the unmistakable shape of another hunter. Suddenly, it all clicked. The haunting growls had been a communication, low and rhythmic, beckoning back to the waiting predator I now could see. Their territory was massive, and I was caught in the middle. The woods no longer felt like a sanctuary, but rather a trap. Think. I urged myself, frantically searching for an escape route. The trees above seemed daunting, but a plan began to form. I had to use the branches to swing from tree to tree, just like I'd seen in movies, though my body screamed at the thought of such a risk. But the two creatures had an uncanny ability to mirror one another, turning my every moment of hope into dread. They circled below like wolves waiting for a visit from a careless deer, and when I saw it, a glimmer of light through the trees. Distant, flickering, the faint promise of a campfire. A miracle or another trap. Still holding fast to my makeshift branch, I knew I had to take the chance. The fire could mean help or more danger. My pulse quickened, the thudding in my ears drowning out the sounds of the storm. I had to make a decision. I could try to leap from branch to branch and risk falling into the jaws of the monsters below, or I could remain paralyzed by fear. A thunderclap erupted around me, and in an instant, I made the choice. I released my grip, launching myself into the void between branches. Would I land safely, or fall to the depths of a predator's maw? With that, the leap into the unknown began. The air rushed past me, a wild torrent filled with rain, fear, and the possibility of salvation. Branches swiped and scratched at my skin as I flew through the space between, heart hammering a frantic rhythm inside my chest. Would I find my balance, or splatter against the ground like a fallen leaf? Gravity tugged me downwards, and I caught a branch with my hands, swinging awkwardly. My legs flailed out of control for a moment, snagging another limb that barely managed to crumple beneath my weight. I twisted, throwing my body toward the fleeting light that danced behind the trees. The growls roared louder below, a symphony of hunger and fury that sent needles of panic cascading down my spine. I had to move. I could barely see the ground, but I felt them weighing the seconds until they struck. Keep going, I gasped to myself. My muscles screamed, but I pushed forward, bounding toward that flickering promise. With each leap, a slice of adrenaline surged through me, momentarily shielding me from the sharp bite of exhaustion. Just as I reached the edge of a thicket, the storm flared with a flash of brilliance illuminating the shadows. In that instant, I saw them. The two monstrous forms prowling, their eyes glowing with a primal desire. They circled each other before breaking apart, as if they were honing in on me in sync. A chill slithered under my skin, anchoring me briefly in terror. Not today, I screamed, forcing my body to move again. I darted through the brush, stumbling over roots and mud. Desperation drank up my instincts, and despite the raw panic, I felt a flicker of hope. If the campfire was indeed real, there would be warmth, maybe even a human presence. My breath burst out in puffs of fog, the chill biting into me, but I pressed on. The thundering beat of dual growls echoed in my ears, rising and falling like drowning waves, threatening to pull me back into the abyss of despair. Then, through a final swirl of trees, I broke free into the clearing. My feet hit the ground with a dull thud. The fire crackled with life, its orange glow flickering against the gray storm. But my relief was short-lived. A voice cut through the rain-soaked air, deep and rusty. "What are you doing here?" I froze. The ground beneath my feet shifted, and the shadows danced again, revealing a figure cloaked in damp furs, face hidden beneath a hood. My heart sank. I was no longer just prey. I was an intruder stepping into someone else's territory. I saw the fire. I stammered, the words tasting of fear and deceit. I thought, what? The voice boomed, echoing in the wilderness like a gunshot. Thought you could escape those beasts out there? The sound of approaching claws gained intensity from behind me, a furious reminder that I had no time to waste. "Please," I whispered, desperation coating my tongue. "Help me." The figure shifted, revealing eyes that sparkled with suspicion and something else. Was it curiosity, or was it the gleam of violence that churned behind their gaze? But before either of us could say another word, the growls erupted into a furious chorus. The two beasts burst into the clearing, jaws snapping, the distant soft glow of flame now stark against the ferocity of nature's wrath. Panic and adrenaline collided, driving me anew. There was nowhere to hide, and I had only moments left to choose. Would I gamble my fate on a stranger whose motives were as shadowy as the woods? or would I face the monsters that threatened to consume me alive? The choice laid itself bare, and my heart raced with the effort to decide. A deafening roar pierced the air, drowning out the crackling of the fire. The beasts flanked me, their outlines less obscured now. Heavy, muscular bodies lunged with ferocity, jaws glistening, intent on claiming their prize. I turned to the figure in fur, eyes wide, pleading for salvation. "Do something," I begged, my voice a whisper lost amidst the chaos. I could feel the warmth of the fire behind me, offering a false sense of security as the temperature dropped. The stranger hesitated, gauging the approaching terror with a cool detachment that chilled me more than the rain. "Move," the voice instructed, as the figure melted into the shadows. A glint of metal flashed before my eyes. Was it a weapon? "If you want to live, run." Before I could process the command, I bolted, feet pounding the soggy earth, every instinct screaming survival. The beasts lunged, giving chase, claws scraping against bark and mud. My heart raced. I could feel their hot breath on my neck, the stink of wet fur filling my nostrils. Ahead, I spotted a dense thicket. If I could reach it, maybe I could evade them. I pushed onward, limbs thrumming with fear-fueled energy as I dove into the underbrush. Twigs snapped like bones beneath me, branches clawed at my skin, but I kept pushing. The growls faded slightly, but the pounding heartbeat in my ears only grew louder. I nestled low, praying the dense foliage would hide me from view. I held my breath, pressing my back against a damp trunk. My body trembled, a coiled spring waiting to unravel. Voices floated through the night low, muttering. The figure had followed. "They can scent fear," it said softly. "Stay calm." "Calm?" I snapped back, panic rising like bile. "Calm. There are monsters out there." The figure stepped closer, their face still masked under the hood, but now their voice softened almost educationally. "Those beasts are as much a part of this wilderness as we are. Respect them. Fear is the worst ally you can have." I wanted to scream, how could anyone respect those beasts? But the sobering reality of my situation washed over me. What do I do? The hooded figure measured my uncertainty, eyes glinting like metal. "You learn or you die. That's your choice." A low growl rumbled from outside my thicket, deepening into an echoing howl. The shadows twisted, and suddenly, two gleaming eyes locked onto mine from the darkness. The shock of recognition struck me. They're searching for me. I breathed, the realization smacking me like a cold wave. "That's right. You're a target. But don't take it personally." The creature outside pressed closer, pushing aside branches with a snout that gleamed like a polished knife. Every muscle in my body tensed, but my mind raced with thoughts of escape. What did they want? More importantly, would they chase me even if I were no longer running? What do they want? I squeezed out, voice trembling. "They want only to survive. Just as you do." Suddenly, the beast flung itself into the thicket, snarling and snapping. In an instant, I saw its savage teeth, felt the rush of its hot breath flood over me. Panic exploded through my veins. I had to act, fight or flight, survival hung in the balance. And in that moment, a new awareness dawned. I wasn't just wrestling with beasts. I was wrestling with myself. The stranger's words echoed. Respect them, feel them, but above all, know when to respond. I couldn't just hide in fear. If I were going to live, I'd have to become part of this brutal dance of survival. Yet even as I steeled myself for what was to come, another thought crept in. Was the stranger really my ally? Or were they just as wild as the beasts I was trying to escape? The moment teetered on the edge of chaos, with jaws poised to strike. And then I knew the next decision would decide everything. The creature lunged, teeth bared, and I dove to the side, heart racing as I narrowly avoided contact. Mud splattered up my legs, mixing with the cold rain that fell steadily. The mask of foliage above rustled as the monster scrambled to right itself. Breathless, I rolled to my feet, adrenaline surging. I had made my choice. I was going to fight back. But what did that even mean? The figure had vanished into the shadows, leaving me alone to confront the beast. With a frenzied glance, I scanned my surroundings for anything that could help. The thicket cramped my movements but offered some shelter. Beneath the heavy roots of a fallen tree, remnants of old branches lay strewn about. I grabbed a sizable stick and gripped it tightly. The beast, now on its feet, eyed me fiercely, its growls vibrating the air. I swallowed hard, steadying my breath. "Come on," I shouted, my voice wavering but desperate. "I won't let you take me." The creature didn't flinch. It advanced, hackles raised, muscles rippling under its sleek fur. I recalled the stranger's words, "Respect the wilderness. Respond when needed." Pushing my fear down, I took a step toward it. Back, back. I swung the stick, a wild arc meant to intimidate rather than strike. The beast stopped momentarily, confusion flickering in its eyes. I could almost hear the gears turning in its animal mind. With a sudden burst of energy, it sprang forward, muscles coiling like springs ready to release. I barely dodged its jaws again, the rush of wind brushing my cheek as it lunged past me. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out all sound but the thudding of survival instincts screaming for action. I charged after it. What was I doing? My brain screamed this was insane, but something primal pushed me forward. I grabbed a smaller branch closer to the ground, throwing it with all my might in its direction. It struck the beast's side with a dull thud, causing it to rear back, assessing me with a new intensity. "You won't scare me," I shouted, though I feared my voice was more uncertain than brave. But to my surprise, the creature took a cautious step back, head tilting in curiosity rather than aggression. In that moment, I saw it differently, a stunning creature of power and grace caught between survival and instinct. What if this was more than just a battle? What if, beneath the ferocity, it too understood the cycles of life in this harsh wilderness? As if sensing my hesitation, it lunged again, but this time I stood my ground. I raised the stick, ready to defend myself. Just then, a sudden rustling caught my attention. I turned, heart sinking as another beast appeared from the shadows, flanking me. My blood froze as two predators closed in, their eyes glinting like polished stones. Fear clawed at my throat. How do I handle this? Was it simply about surviving? Or was there something deeper to uncover? "Don't just stand there. You need to react." The hooded figure's words echoed through my mind. Now, I was surrounded. What was the right move? Fight? Surrender? With my heart pounding and the beast slowly circling, the weight of the decision became heavier than any physical threat. A spark of desperation ignited within me. "Okay," I whispered, resolving to channel my fear into something stronger. "We'll see how this plays out." Suddenly, echoes startled the air, a chilling howl resonating from the depths of the forest. What now? What did that mean? Answers swirled in my mind as the two beasts locked eyes with me, seemingly waiting for my next move. Would it be fight or flight? Would they follow instinct or the unexpected call of the wild? And what was hiding just beyond my sight? A thought struck me. Maybe the real hunt was just beginning. The forest trembled with energy as the creatures hovered, their muscles coiled like tightly wound springs, ready to unleash chaos. Each low growl reverberated through the thick air, a primal symphony underscoring our standoff. I didn't want to show them fear, but the weight of their hungry gazes felt like an iron anchor pressing down on my spirit. "Breathe," I told myself, forcing air into my lungs. I had to think clearly, or this moment would be my last. The echoes of that chilling howl still pricked at the edges of my consciousness. What else lurked beyond the shadows? Suddenly, the bigger beast, the one I had first faced, darted forward again. This time I was more prepared. I held the stick tightly, bracing myself against the thrill of panic surging within me. I swung low, connecting with its side again. The creature yelped in surprise, skidding to a stop and glaring back at me, its expression momentarily shocked. But before I could savor the small victory, a low growl from the second beast sent a jolt through my body. It padded closer, tail raised, circling around me like a predator testing its prey. I was trapped, caught in their cruel game of cat and mouse. I glanced at the trees, searching for an escape route. There was none. Think, think, I urged myself, the frantic beat of my heart outpacing reason. What would my grandfather do? His rules always echoed in my mind during perilous moments. The wilderness demanded respect but also cunning. I needed to outsmart them, not just fight. The creatures stood poised, their eyes shimmering with unfiltered instinct. Driven by survival, they were a reminder of the raw laws of nature. But what if I could use that to my advantage? Instinctively, I dropped the stick, leaving it on the ground as bait. The first beast stiffened in confusion. The second one momentarily distracted by my sudden lack of aggression. Maybe I could manipulate their instincts, make them think I was no longer a threat. That I began to back away slowly, deliberately, keeping my movements smooth. "Come on, follow me," I whispered, willing them to play along. The larger one tilted its head, gauging my retreat with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. They followed, cautiously. Each step I took back was mirrored by them. I could almost sense their hesitation. I edged toward the thicker thicket, the way behind me becoming impenetrable with hope. It was a calculated risk, but it might work. But then, just as I reached for the tangled roots of a nearby bush, the howl sounded again, an answer echoing through the trees, deeper and more haunting than before. Panic flickered to life in the beast's eyes. They froze, chests heaving, instinct kicking in like a flash of lightning. The air grew thick. What made that sound? What was it calling for? The beasts glanced back at me, confusion giving way to apprehension. I sensed they were debating. Stay with the food or flee from the unknown. The forest held its breath, and in that timeless moment, my fate hung precariously. Then, with a sudden rush, they turned, slipping back into the darkness. Gone. Just like that, I was left alone, the echoes of the howl fading into the distance. What awaited me in the depths of the wilderness? As I stood there, the cool rain drenching me once more, my heart pounded not just from fear but from the thrill of survival. The creatures may have retreated, but were they truly gone? Or would they return? The forest remained eerily still, shadows dancing at the periphery of my vision. What had I just avoided? And what lingered in the brush, waiting for the chaos to unfold once more? It seemed my true test was far from over. The silence that enveloped me felt almost deafening. I strained to hear any sign of those beasts, any sound that might hint at what lurked in the dense shadows. My breaths came shallow, quick bursts against the damp chill of the air. The thrill of survival coursed through me, a mix of adrenaline and dread. I knew I had escaped one danger, but the question loomed. What else was waiting to pounce? Glancing around, the trees towered like sentinels, their twisted branches weaving a web of darkness. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I stepped forward cautiously, my feet slipping over the muddy ground. Each crunch of twigs underfoot echoed like thunder in the stillness. To my left, a movement, a flicker of fur darting between the trees. My heart felt like it would burst. I whipped around, stick still gripped in my hand. Adrenaline surged as I prepared for a fresh attack, but nothing came. Just that oppressive quiet. Get a grip, I muttered under my breath, trying to anchor myself in this moment. I needed to remember my grandfather's lessons. The wild demanded respect, but it also demanded awareness. I could not let my fear dictate my next move. Determined, I turned further into the forest. I had no idea where I was going, but the only way was forward. I had to find shelter, to regroup, and to assess what I still had against nature's cruelty. Every breath felt like an echo of resolve, driving me deeper into the unknown. Passing through clusters of ferns, I caught a flicker of movement again, closer this time. My gaze snapped toward it, a flash of gray vanishing behind a massive oak. My heart raced anew. Just a deer, I told myself, but doubt gnawed at me. Was it really just a deer? Or was it something else? Something lurking with a hungry intent? The howl echoed again in the back of my mind, mingling with the rustle of leaves. A shiver running down my spine. Pushing on, I stumbled upon a small stream. The gurgling water offered a glimmer of hope. Fresh water. I knelt down, cupping my hands to drink, the coolness washing away the remnants of fear. I could feel my strength returning, energy surging as I quenched my thirst. But the moment was fleeting. A crack behind me sent a jolt down my spine. Whirling around, my eyes frantically searched the underbrush. Nothing. Just shadows, blurring forms. I moved to my feet, stick raised defensively. Then I saw it. A silhouette, darker than the shadows around it, slipped between the trees. It was huge, unnaturally large, a wall of fur and snarl. Just when I thought I'd outsmarted one threat, another emerged, creeping forth with elongated limbs and an unsettling grace. Panic flashed within me, and I darted back toward the trees, heart hammering in my chest like an urgent warning. I stumbled through the undergrowth, desperate to find cover. As the beast lurked closer, a chill ran through my bones. I couldn't help but think, did I draw it into my world? Was I the cause of this madness? In my frantic escape, I reached a hollowed-out tree, an ancient giant with a gap big enough for me to slip inside. I pulled myself in, my heart racing as darkness enveloped me. I held my breath, straining to hear any sign of the creature. Silence once again wrapped around me like a cloak, but that silence felt pregnant with tension. What had I just walked into? And what did I awake in the heart of that ancient forest? I felt the weight of it all settling in a primal challenge echoed in my mind, louder than any howl. Was survival really within my grasp, or had I stepped from one trap only to stumble into another? As I waited, knowing full well that I could only hide for so long, one question lingered in the dark. What else was out there, lurking in the depths, waiting for its chance to strike? The hollowed-out tree felt like a tomb, dark and suffocating. Every breath came shallow, each heartbeat deafening in the silence. I strained my ears, expecting the growling to return, but all I heard was the soft drip of rainwater cascading to the forest floor. The restlessness stirred within me. Fear wrapped around my chest like a steel band. What would my grandfather do? The question echoed through my mind as I recalled the lessons stitched in his jagged stories around the fire. Trust your instincts, feel the nature around you, adapt or perish. The rules floated back, blurred but defiant, each one a lifeline in this treacherous sea of shadows. And then, a low rumble shattered the quiet. My heart seized. It was close. I inched toward the tear in the bark, peering cautiously into the chaos outside. The rain had eased, but the air felt electrified, charged with the hunger of the night. I could almost sense the beasts prowling, their eyes scanning the territory I had inadvertently breached. It hit me then, a truth that cut through the fog of panic. This wasn't just about survival. It was about understanding the wilderness, its rules, and its rhythms. The creatures couldn't be defeated by raw force. They were a part of this world, living by their ancient code. I had to find my place within it. Would I fight them? Or could I forge a pact, however fleeting? A loud crack broke my reverie. I plucked myself away from the trunk and bolted. No longer would I shrink from the chaos beyond. I summoned the strength right from my gut. Deep breaths fueled my surge toward clarity. A flicker of movement caught my eye again. A dark shape darted beneath the thick underbrush. Too fast to catch, but it pulled me forward. The sacred dance of life and death drew me deeper into its embrace, the thrill of unpredictability coursing through my veins. The low growls resumed, emanating from behind me. Instinct touched my shoulder, urging me to run, but I silenced it. Instead, I recalled my grandfather's third rule: always be aware of your surroundings. I couldn't just flail. I had to move with purpose. With every step through the thin undergrowth, I honed in, honing my senses, rooting out distractions, diving deeper into the primal forest that pulsed around me. From the thicket emerged a family of wild deer, graceful and raw. They grazed, heads low, oblivious to my presence. I hesitated, muscle memory urging me to run, but I pivoted instead. The beasts were near, drawn to the chaos. I could use this distraction. Now, I summoned the courage and slipped into the shadows, threading my way quietly around the animals, blending with the night as though I were merely one more fragment of the wilderness. The growls intensified, the beasts were close now, and my pulse quickened as I neared an ancient stone outcrop, jagged yet inviting. Wind whipped fear through the trees and ruffled my clothes. They lunged. Their snarls echoed like the curses of spirits long buried. I ducked behind the stones, heart pounding in sick, harmonious rhythm with every growl outside. From my perch, I peered around the edge. The two creatures burst into the clearing, wild and furious. But the deer remained blissfully unaware, oblivious to their fate. The predators circled, and I watched, mesmerized by the raw intensity of the moment. This was the dance. And then, something clicked. I knew what to do. I hurled a small rock into the dense underbrush, and it landed just beyond the deer. The ground erupted with life. The deer startled, bolting away in a flurry of frantic motion. The beast snapped to attention, instinctively giving chase. Now, I breathed. Not wasting a second, I slipped out from behind the stone and sprinted into the thicket, keeping my body low and silent. I could hear their growls fade into the distance, the chase drowning out their snarls as I fled deeper into the woods. This wasn't the end. I knew this was merely the beginning. Eventually, the forest opened into a broad clearing. Starlight bathed the ground in a soft glow, a stark contrast to the darkness I had known. I slowed, my pace, catching my breath, the enormity of it all crashing down on me. The wilderness had shown me its brutal side, but I had faced it with my grandfather's wisdom guiding me. Moving cautiously, I searched for signs of shelter. There, nestled between two large boulders, a thin canopy stretched overhead like arms ready to embrace. I crawled inside, a refuge within the soft embrace of Mother Nature. My heart rate slowed, the silence wrapping around me like a warm blanket. Dawn was creeping closer, and in that moment, I felt a flicker of hope. The rules lived within me now, not just as stories told by flickering flamelight, but as lessons learned the hard way. I would emerge from this wilderness not just a survivor, but a spirit intertwined with the wild. Resting my head against the soft earth, I allowed sleep to take me, every breath calmed by the rhythm of life surrounding me. The dawn would break, with warmth inching its way through the trees. I would face whatever came next, whether beasts or the wilderness itself, because I had learned the most vital rule of all. Trust in yourself, and the wild will unveil its secrets. So as the night slipped into dawn around me, I felt truly alive for the first time as the horizon brightened. My grandfather's spirit felt woven into the very fabric of this wilderness, reminders that every choice shapes destiny, swaying to the raw power of the untamed world. I would carry that forward, every challenge, every hard-fought moment, etched in my soul. And as the first rays of sun crept through the trees, illuminating the path before me, I knew it was time to rise and embrace my journey. Now, it's time for you to act. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will take you on wild adventures. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions, your theories, and how this story resonated with you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your engagement is crucial, and only true fans understand the importance of these actions.